Hello, everyone, and welcome to my final project. This project is going to be somewhat similar to the digital display, but we're going to go a lot more in depth. And to do that, I will be analyzing 3 different games. Firstly, we're going to look at The Last of Us Part 2, then we're going to shift over to Elden Ring, and we're going to end with Outer Wilds. So, how am I going to be analyzing these games? I am going to be looking at 3 distinct aspects. Firstly is going to be affordances. This is going to be at the helm, just like that digital display. Secondly, we're going to look at immersion. And finally, is going to be the concept of the magic circle within each of these games. Now, what does this mean? Within affordances, we're going to be looking at general affordances, that being what can you do in the game, what can you not do in the game. Secondly, we're going to look at biological affordances, and finally, phantom affordances within games. So, what are biological affordances? According to Eden et al., biological affordances are demands that may be inputted through a certain device. That means your controller, your mouse, your keyboard, button pushing, lever pressing, things similar to that. All right, so what is your body actually doing to make something happen in the game? To kind of complement that, I'm going to look at the Brower piece as well, and that deals with affects. So Brower describes these affects as rushes of adrenaline, pulse racing, fist clenching, palm sweating, all those biological aspects that you're also going to be getting while you're playing the game, right? So in the case of Elden Ring, we're going to be looking at massive boss fights, and when somebody's swinging a massive sword at you, you ain't gonna be calm. All right, your heart's gonna be racing, and you know your character's is too. So with that, how's your body reacting? How then are you controlling what's going on within the game? And then we're gonna look a little bit at phantom affordances as well. So a phantom affordance, as defined by Sereda, is a promise that the developers give you, and then that promise is diverted away from halfway or so through the game. So this is going to be very prevalent within The Last of Us, but we'll get there when we get there. All right. Next, we're going to look at immersion, and immersion is going to deal heavily with ludomusicology, which is the study of music and sound design within games. So for a good example of this, Hambleton writes, "Our understanding of time is strongly tied to sound. People feel and hear the beat of music, the hum of electricity, trickling water, and tapping keyboards. All these sounds we hear, whether passively or actively, whether coupled with haptic sensation or not, tell us time is passing." So, if you're in a game and you're immersed in that game, you're going to be possibly hearing crickets chirping, and that tells you it's probably nighttime, right? Where if you hear birds, you're going to be thinking that it's daytime or morning time, right? So all these little things help with that immersion. And then in the case of The Last of Us, Elden Ring, and Outer Wilds, all of these are very music-centric. So that means you're going to have some memories of those games when you hear that music playing. Finally, is the concept of the magic circle. Perron and Wolf describe the magic circle in the case that it represents the idea that games take place within limits of time and space and are self-contained systems of meaning. What that means is you're stepping into a world, you're living the life of that character, and you're taking meaning from it. But I want to focus in on that last little phrase that I said, taking meaning from it, because also describe that gaming literacy turns the kind of intrinsic look of the magic circle and turn that inside out. What does that mean? That means that the game has meaning, but how are you taking that meaning that the developers wrote into the game and applying it to your own life? So these are the main 3 aspects that we're going to be looking at in each of these games. So let's start with The Last of Us. All right, for The Last of Us, and as it goes towards pretty much all of our affordances, we're going to be looking at Herb et al. When they say the player has no control over the story, which is mainly depicted in cutscenes and using story cues in the environment. The player takes on the fighting and moving part of the PC. So, in The Last of Us, it's a very unique game in the sense that you are traveling through Seattle, and it's a very open city, but you're tied into specific paths. So, for instance, we're going to see what happens here. So we are going to move forward and get through this gate.
Okay. You are here. And the hospital's there. Cut through the park.
All right, so just in that little dialogue, we get the look of the map here, where we are, where we need to be, and then the dialogue saying we have to cut through the park, which is right here. Now notice, if I'm like, you know what, I just want to go through this building instead. The game gives you no option to do so. And it's the same on the other side. And one more thing I want to point out before we get into this next section is how games lay out their key bindings. This goes into biological affordances. Key bindings being how you move your character, how you can jump, how you can run. So in some games, for PlayStation, you're going to press the X button to run. Where in this game, if I press that, I'm going to jump, right? Some games, it's going to be holding down the left stick. If I do that in this game, nothing happens. So how do you run? It's going to be left bumper. And then finally, if you're going to crouch or lay down, that's going to be its own specific key as well. Right? So let's do as the game wants us to and cut through the park. And again, this is kind of a killer of agency. You know, you have to take a specific path to get to a specific place. All right. We hear a little whistling. I wanted to take a moment also. We get some music. Get the footsteps. It's very quiet, very eerie. All right, let's move forward. Okay. And now we have to hold a specific button to remove the arrow. There we go.
Shit.
All right.
Who the fuck?
Very eerie. And now I want you to look at the bottom right there. You see how it has the image of a gun, the can on the end there. That's going to be our suppressor. So that's how we do things quietly. So we're going to look through two different ways of handling things. So firstly, this is where player agency comes in. You can choose how, and that sound cue tells us they're seeing us. So you can choose how you wish to go about things, right? So though the scenario is set before you and you can't change it, you can decide how you want to take on conflict.
Shut it.
Right, so we can do things all quiet like and pick them off one at a time like that. Or we can go loud. And I want you to realize what she just said there. She said Andrew, right? And Hess talks about the dehumanization of enemies within Medal of Honor. And in this game, it's the complete opposite. They want everything to feel visceral and real, like these characters know each other and like you're disrupting them. Right. I gotta take out that arrow there. And also the sound design of when you actually take out an enemy is very interesting as well. All right, folks, we're taking a quick cut away from that whole forest scene to deliver another example similar to the Andrew one. So, as stated previously, we're looking at more of a humanization of characters rather than a dehumanization. And this entire scene that I'm going to show you, it really brings into your immersion aspects of the game. So, let's take a look. All right. So, as you can see there, you might have been able to hear the very kind of tense droning of the music in the background, and then the gunshot followed by this almost horrific sound coming from him in the final moments. So, in other games, typically when you shoot an NPC, they kind of make a noise and then drop. But here it's the complete opposite. We're getting that long noise followed by the emotions of the characters around them that know that person, right? So quite disturbing. Let's look at another point of immersion.
There's the hospital. Fuck. Thought I'd be closer.
All right, I know that might have been a little bit hard to hear, but this is where we're getting a tiny bit into the immersion piece. As you can somewhat hear the wind, right? You could hear birds back there or right there, and you could hear the little scratch of the pencil in the notebook. And all of these things just make the world feel alive, and it's going to be the same breaking into this place. Not just the initial glass shattering, but all the small pieces. And the sound of the glass cracking under your feet. So very cool little details that just make each step realistic and put you in that story. Now, this is where our game takes an interesting rhetorical turn. So, for the first 3 days of gameplay, so 3 days being 3 sections of gameplay, you play as Ellie in her quest to avenge Joel, who was killed by her, Abby. So, Herb et al. Mentions that on being forced to play the Abby character for 3 days after Ellie, which is the same 3 days just through the perspective of the character of Abby, says almost all players initially showed great reluctance, confusion, and anger when having to control the Abby character, as she was the character who brutally killed the previous PC Joel. So after having gone through that, having to play as this character now upset a lot of people. But Brower also mentions something very interesting. He says, rhetoric is the art of moving an audience to embrace a perspective regarding an active controversy. And this is very much a controversy. So how do the developers swing this? They swing it through a lens of sympathy. So as you play the character of Abby, their goal is to make people feel bad for her. That her father was killed by Joel, so she just does to Joel what he did to her, basically. Which is kill a part of her, but she did it physically. So throughout the entire 3 days that we see, we'll grow sympathy for Abby and see Ellie's mission as more humanized, but in a negative sense. All right. But we do have a good biological affordance example. Actually, it's an affect example coming up here, which is where we get some scary stuff. So already, environment's really creepy. It's really quiet. So
Oh, shit!
and then we get the press. It's already a stressful situation with one of the infected here. And my aim was not great, but
Off to a great start.
so even there, it went from quiet, you heard a little bit of clicking, to now you're face to face with this screaming, infected, zombie-like creature coming at you. And then you gotta deal with it. The game's telling you gotta be butt mashing, which works your physical body affecting what's happening on the screen. So you get a little bit of that heart race, possibly some sweaty palms there for Brower's affect. And it's a cool little example there. All right. Now, the last concept we have is, of course, our tie back to the magic circle. So what does this game completely encapsulate and teach us about living everyday life? And I think it comes down to two things. One is how far will you go for love, and then the consequences of the actions that you do take. By the end of the game, spoiler alert, Ellie loses a couple fingers. I'm not going to spoil how that happens if you haven't played the game, but the very last scene is her sitting in a room with a guitar alone. Her lover basically walked out because of her drive for revenge, and she sat there in a decrepit house, not even being able to play the guitar anymore. And that guitar was her tie to her father figure PC, Joel. And that was the last little bit that she had from him that now she can't even do anymore. And so it's a very sad story in itself. And it does show you to have an appreciation for those around you and to not seek out revenge, because revenge is the endless pitfall that leads to bad things. So in whole, do not tarnish the relationships that you have. Speaking of tarnished, Elden Ring starts off very similar to Baldur's Gate in the fact that you get to choose who you want to be. So unlike The Last of Us, where you're tied to playing as either Ellie or Abby, in this, you get to pick a class. As you can see, the names listed there. You can look at attributes such as the level you'll start at, including your starting stats for things such as strength, dexterity, so how quick you can move, faith, arcane, all the things you can see right there. So for this case, we're going to choose the samurai. You can get body type A or body type B, the first one being for male, second one for female. You'll then choose a name. So let's use the name Kyle. Kyle the samurai. Of course, goes to body type. You can choose age, a item that you start the game with, and then, of course, you get to choose what you want to look like. So these include vocal options, skin color options, facial hair, hair on head, eye color, most of the things that you can find in Baldur's Gate, though not to the extreme of it. So this in and of itself is a very cool affordance. Choosing who you want to be already creates a tie between the character and the player. Let's jump in. Welcome to Elden Ring. And unlike our previous title, The Last of Us, Elden Ring does not follow a linear day-based structure. It instead allows players to go where they want and do what they want, though this can be heavily dependent on skill. So let's take a look at the first area, shall we? This is Limgrave, one of the first areas that you go into, and just a small section of the map, even though it in and of itself is massive. Now, for general affordances, what are we looking at in the game? Though I'm a very baseline started off character, level 1, you can switch out armor sets, you can switch out weapons to suit different playstyles. So if you like attacking fast, there are weapons for that. If you like slow swinging, very heavy weapons, they have plenty of those as well. Or as you can see on my back, I got a bow. So if you want to attack from a distance or even use magic, that's a possibility as well. So not only do you have different classes, but different play styles to suit different people. Now, another big affordance of the game is the fact that you're going to get curb stomped by 90% of things in this world. And so you're going to have to get stronger in some way, and that affordance comes through this little light right here. This is called a Site of Grace. At the Site of Graces, you can eventually level up your stats. So you can get stronger, you can upgrade your capability to do like bigger magical effects, like throw fireballs at people, all sorts of things. That comes just a little bit later in the game past where we are. Right. Now, when you first walk out those doors that we walked through, this is your first path that most players see. And you're going to see there's a knight down there. The first instinct is let's go fight him. And he's not supposed to really be your first encounter, but more of like a haha, you suck, come back later when you're better, right? But here I want to focus in on a couple of our key aspects, and the first one's the biological side of it. So Eden et al. State the audio and visual parts of the game constrain the visual perception system. The game controller constrains the motor system. The object, reward structure, and contents of the game constrain the motivational system. That is, limits the motivational system of the player to respond in specific, limited ways. So, they're referring, I believe, mostly to first-person shooters where you cannot see in a whole 360-degree field around you. The same kind of applies here, in that you have to turn the camera to see what's behind you, though you can hear what's behind you. So, one interesting affordance that the developers put in here is the lock-on system. So the lock-on system is going to move the camera in conflict so that you don't have to focus on doing that during the fight. So I'm going to show you this fight with the knight with the lock-on system versus without it. But during this fight, I want you to also focus on two other elements. We got the music side for our ludomusicology, which is epic boss music is going to be playing, and you wonder how that affects your body. Does it increase stress? Does it make you more focused? I think that kind of depends on what music it is and what boss you're facing. But we also have the affects as well. I mean, this dude is massive. He jumps around, rears back on the horse, and it's a little tense, especially once you see that health bar going down. All right, so you're going to see the white circle appear on the knight right there on the mid back. So you'll see as I walk around, the camera stays centered on him. Right? If I get rid of it, that's what happens. All right. So there's the lock on again. And we'll start the fight. So notice how we get audio and visual cues for his attacks. Alright. So with the lock on, we are not constrained within this fight. Now, we'll take the lock on off. Alright. So I'm having to move my camera. So it makes it a lot more difficult as my thumb is having to move the camera every time I dodge. Back to the lock on. All right. And I'll let him hit us here. He wanted to take his time. All right. So as you can see, we had the audio, we had the visual. It got constrained without the lock-on system. Reward structure is, people's pride is challenged here. It's like, I'm going to beat this knight. He's not going to beat me because he's not better than me. So it's that whole competitive nature that kind of drives the game. Plus, you get some sweet rewards once you actually defeat a boss. Now, another very cool aspect and affordance that the developers put in here is one that's not really good for the player. So let's say you get into this fight again and we're going to try something. Right? So let's say, okay, I'm getting stressed out. Let me just pause the game. Yep. There is no pausing in this game. Now also notice, like I said, this is a vast open area, and so running on foot is pretty slow. So we're gonna go grab something that will kind of make travel a little bit easier. Right, so nighttime has rolled around, and as you can see in the bottom there, we got this thing called the Spectral Steed Whistle, and this is an affordance to allow the player to move through the map a lot quicker. So we can summon our horse, we can run a lot faster than we were before, and we can double jump. All right, so Elden Ring is massive, and I don't have time to go through all of Elden Ring, or really much of it at all. But there's one aspect that I do want to bring to light. So, Gillern et al. Talks about the formation of communities from one medium to the next. So, for example, Elden Ring as a whole has a following, right? And so that's its own digital community. And from that digital community, others can be born. So, for instance, you have people on YouTube or Twitch who play Elden Ring and have more people watch. They make their own separate community. Or you have Reddit, and there's an r/Elden Ring forum that has 4.3 million members, all for people that want to stay up to date on latest content, maybe get some helpful tips for the different bosses they have to fight. But it's really cool to see one community building up a vast array of other communities. Now, Elden Ring, like I said, is massive. It's kind of hard to follow the story at times because, it's gods, lords, generals, queens, places, you know, but it's not hard to get lost in the beauty of the world, to just hear the music and ambiance, kick back and relax until you get really mad and then you want to quit. So I know I switched characters up on you. It was just to show you guys the beginning of the game, kind of just what Elden Ring's about. But at the end of the day, it is a absolutely stunning game, and it's very difficult, but very rewarding as well. So what is our tie back to the magic circle, from the world that you're seeing right here back to our world? And I think that is perseverance, patience, and swallowing of one's pride. So just like in real life, you're not going to get everything you want when you want it. You have to work for things, you have to persevere towards your goals, and eventually you'll accomplish them. And Elden Ring is no exception. There's really hard bosses in this game, but the more you play, the more you practice, you're eventually going to win. Even if that means coming back at a later time. Alright guys, I believe it is time for our third and final game, Outer Wilds. Welcome to one of the best games I've ever played. This is Outer Wilds. There's no dialogue, just text boxes. And you are much like this guy. You are a Hearthian, and you are going to launch into the stars to find out what happened to an ancient civilization. So here, we've been tasked with our first mission. Go get the launch codes so that we can get to space. Music and sound design is crucial to this world, and it adds a layer of simplicity that many games have lost. We get to see our first sunrise. Now, in Hess's essay on Medal of Honor, he talks about history, and almost like being a museum that you walk through in the game. And this game's very similar as well. And you'll see that right here. As we walk through, we'll see the expeditions of those that came before us, what they founded. And here is an artifact. So we'll just ask him about the statue. And he wishes us luck. So here is a room that I want to spend a little time in. This is our museum. This tells us the story before the story. What we need to know about the galaxy, what is known, and eventually what we might be able to add to. I guess you can see here. The stone just moved. Why? Who knows? We see the planets of our solar system, different places founded by others, and immediately the player gets a connection to the environment that they're in, along with seeing one of these creepy things that we'll be seeing later. As you can see, we have a translator. This tool is very important in the game as it helps us understand the story. go up, talk to this guy. We'll just skip through the dialogue. All right, we got our launch codes. We are cleared to fly. As I walk in a massive circle. All right, so as we go out here, something interesting happens. So that will come into play a little bit later. We can talk to people about that. We'll just kind of skip through that for now. All right. Now this is going to be a frequency reader. So we can hear some music there. We'll try to close in on more signals. Take some drums. All right. And there is the banjo. So each one of those are one of the astronauts that have gone into space. All right, so as we get into the affordances, the question comes, why is music so important, and why did they choose not to have dialogue? An interesting quote from Murray is quoted in Hess is the more persuasive the sensory representation of the digital space, the more we feel that we are present in the virtual world and the wider range of actions we will seek to perform. So it's almost like finding a sweet balance in simplicity and having the experience be guided by the own imagination of the player. So we're in our ship now. And this is where the affordances begin. Our only goal right now is explore. That's all the game gives us. Go into the universe, seek out what you want. Let me turn this down a little bit. Seek out what you want and just have a good time. But as a player, you'll come to understand something very, very important. And that important thing is this. Every 22 minutes, the sun in the sky explodes, destroying every planet in the galaxy. So, when we tie this back to the Davison and Leon piece, they quote, some affordances act as barriers to prevent action. For example, many of us have experienced the moment of annoyance when we complete a form online, click submit, and are directed back to the form because some section was filled out improperly. The same concept happens here, and this is the major affordance of the game. And see, the NPCs don't remember what happened, but you do. Our major affordance is that the sun acts like that resubmitted form. Oh, you did something wrong, aka you didn't figure out what's going on in the galaxy, so you're going to keep resetting until you figure it out. But the difference here is that with each reset, you gain new knowledge as to what's going on until you can completely figure it out. Now, Another fun fact, Hamilton states that pausing the game for Outer Wilds freezes time, a disconnect from the magic circle. So if we press pause, music stops, or music and air and all the other uh, musical effects of the world, right? And so this is pulling you away from your immersion to go back into real life. Now, what are we looking at for biological affordances? As you can see, top right, we have a couple controls. Left side, we have some controls as well. And there's a very basic tutorial that they give you on the planet before you actually take off. It's just, so movements pretty simple. Now, what about affects? Outside of fearing the planet exploding, there's only really one other area that deals with those affects. So, let's take you there now. Like I said in the beginning of the video, you are free to explore any planet that you want in the beginning, but this is the Dark Bramble. And I talked about that little anglerfish in the beginning, and you're about to see why. So I'm going to be quiet and let you kind of just experience what happens here. There you have it. The anglerfish. And those things are stalking all throughout the Dark Bramble, and makes you kind of nervous going through there. You have to just drift by them, no engines, but you don't really learn that until you die a couple times and get mad. So then the world resets, 22 minutes starts again, and you're back onto the road of discovery. Now, Lurison et al. Comments that as players proceed in a game, they gradually discover the rules that operate in the universe constructed by this game. In games in which the gameplay departs from simply following an algorithm, players engage in the experience by trying to discover the algorithm itself. Playing is a continuous loop between the user and the computer, with players trying to build a mental model of the computer model employed. So, it's just like I had said, the more you play, the more you explore, the more you're going to understand. And then it'll get to the point where you get in your ship and you know exactly where you're going and what to do. Throughout this game, you never see your character. Your first person, they could be anyone. You're immersed in this world through discovery, through helping your people find out what happened to this ancient civilization. But I'm going to have to throw some spoilers down. And if you haven't played this game, I highly suggest you stop listening. No, that might be harder for you, Professor, but if you haven't played Outer Wilds. But I highly suggest pausing, playing the game, then coming back. By the end of the game, you're standing alone at the end of the universe. Everything you knew and loved gone. And it's to the point where you can watch your star explode from that window, as you have 28 other times while playing through the game. This is where the magic circle comes in for this game. Outer Wilds gives you a sense of wonder. It rewards curiosity It teaches you about loneliness, and it gives you historical importance. It builds that up within you through the people that you meet along the way in your adventure. And these are all very true things in our life. People love to be curious about things, and that's how we have some of the inventions that we have now, and even some of the games that we have now, is because people were curious. But Outer Wilds, similar to The Last of Us, has one of the greatest phantom affordances. Where The Last of Us initially promises you a loving story at the end, and then breaks it. Outer Wilds initially promises you to be the hope of your people, to go out, find this civilization, what happened to them, translate the writings and be a great historian, come back, share all that information, and live out the rest of your life as one of the best travelers ever. This is broken at the true end of the game. You find out what's going on. You practically destroy the device so that you can leave and find what the civilization never found. The trade-off is that you're alone. And even though you know that the star explodes every 22 minutes, you are not given the opportunity to bring other people along with you. Your character has to make the choice to depart alone, or not at all. So Outer Wilds has a plethora of affordances. You don't create your character, you are who you are, but you can go anywhere you want at any time. And your curiosity is rewarded. I mean, take a look at this real quick. Let's get across here. Oh, shoot. Oh, no. Oh, no. What the... So, as you can see, there's lots to do, lots to discover. Great immersion in Outer Wilds. Music is fabulous. And it has some good life lessons in there as well. Either way, folks, I hope you enjoyed this little project. Everyone have a great rest of your day. See y'all next time.